Thanks for clicking into Sportsnaut, everybody. Carolyn Manno, joined by Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Mannix. All right, so Chris, let's get into the All-Star game here a little bit. Traditionally known as a fan event, you've got the celebrity parties, and it's always a really good time. This is an unusual year, and I'm wondering if the NBA should reconsider moving forward with the All-Star game, or if we're past that, given the fact that the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, has made it clear that this is not going to be a fan event this time around. This is for TV only. But with everything that the All-Star game traditionally is this the right call?
Well, look, the NBA would argue that players are safer if they are being a part of the All-Star process. During this time that the All-Star break is going to occur, players are basically going to have some freedom across the league. They'll be able to travel a little bit outside of the testing zones. If you're part of All-Star, you are going to be required to test, as will the family members that come with you. So when it comes to COVID-19, the NBA would make the case that they are protecting player safety more than they would be otherwise. But make no mistake, this is a capitalistic event, for lack of a better phrase, for the NBA. I mean, they know that the bulk of their income right now is coming from television revenue. I think the All-Star game is pretty goofy. Most people around the league think the All-Star game is pretty goofy, but people still watch the All-Star game. Last year, the game itself did 7.3 million viewers. Put into context, that would be more than any of the Christmas Day games did this year. The Lakers game topped out at 6.9 million viewers. So people are watching the All-Star game, and the NBA wants to be a good partner with Turner, which wants to put on the All-Star game. The NBA also knows that their sponsors would benefit from having a visible All-Star game. So the NBA would say that they're taking care of their players, protecting their safety, but this is all about making as much money as possible, and having the All-Star game helps them achieve that.
In your opinion, do the financial gains outweigh the potential optics, some of the player reactions, most notably, of course, LeBron James saying like, hey, this might not be a good idea?
Well, LeBron said it might not be a good idea, but then he stopped short of saying I wasn't going to go. If LeBron had said I'm not going, I think we'd be having an entirely different conversation. I think LeBron is a leader on an issue like this, and if he said I'm not going, I think it'd be a domino effect. I think there would be a bunch of players that decide to pull out. The NBA would ultimately have to cancel the All-Star game. What LeBron said was that I'll be there effectively in body, but not in spirit. So he will be down in Atlanta. I think there'll be kind of a shadow over this All-Star game, but as long as no player leaves Atlanta and leaves All-Star with the coronavirus, I think the NBA is going to be able to skate on this. They'll take some criticism from it, and they have, but if this goes off without a hitch, it'll probably be forgotten.
So as it relates to the normal conjecture about who should and shouldn't be on these teams, like most fans do in a normal year, you think about a guy like the Knicks, Julius Randle. The Knicks had gone upwards of 200 games without even having a 40-point score. He drops 44 against Atlanta most recently on Monday night. The Knicks exceeding expectations. Does he deserve a spot?
It's so tough in these last few spots for the All-Star teams. I'm an official voter, and I agonized over it for a while, especially when you look at these final few selections. I would not put Julius Randle on the team, and that's largely because I think you have to have space for Bradley Beal, and I think you have to have space for Tobias Harris. Bradley Beal has been arguably the best scorer in the NBA all season long, even though he's playing on a Wizards team that doesn't offer much help and has been at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings for most of the season. But he has had an excellent season. I think it's impossible to keep him off the team. And Tobias Harris, right now as we speak, the 76ers are the best team in the Eastern Conference. As we speak, they have really one guy that is a lock for the All-Star team, and that's Joel Embiid, an MVP candidate. I just have to include at least two players from the best team in the Eastern Conference. And Tobias Harris, I think, has had a better statistical season, or he has had a better statistical season than Ben Simmons, and he's had a comparable statistical season to Julius Randle. So while Randle has been a revelation for the Knicks, and more importantly for him, has earned himself a big contract, either if he's let go after this year or into the following season, I just think he's going to be a guy that narrowly misses out.
What about the Nets? A lot of people thinking maybe with the James Harden acquisition, that roster is clearly stacked. Is Kyrie Irving one of the players that could potentially get snubbed here?
If you asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said yes, because Kyrie was coming off that extended layoff that he had, taking some time off for personal reasons. The Nets were really struggling, but the Nets have been playing some great basketball over the last week. They went into Phoenix on Tuesday. They won a big game there. Kyrie is averaging about 28 points per game, which is ahead of his season average last year. The Nets certainly will have, James Harden will be on the team. Kevin Durant will be on the team. But if the Nets keep winning, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the coaches and the media votes swing a little bit more towards Kyrie Irving. I mean, the coaches, they vote on the reserves, and they know what kind of player Kyrie is. He may be able to earn himself a spot over this next couple of days.
We started this discussion, Chris, talking about the impact that coronavirus has had on, most recently, the All-Star game, the season overall. I don't think there's any player that's been more affected by this virus than Minnesota's KarlAnthony Towns, the passing of his mother, 5 family members who got the coronavirus, and he himself most recently having a pretty serious bout with this thing. He is back from the COVID list now. How does that affect Minnesota's offensive dynamic?
Well, I mean, KarlAnthony Towns is the engine that drives that Timberwolves offense, one of the best front court players in the entire league. And it's good to see him coming back. As he said in the aftermath, I mean, doctors told him he was effectively genetically predisposed to be at risk for COVID-19. You mentioned his mom and the other members of his family. So even though he's young and extremely healthy, it was certainly a scary time for Karl Towns. Now that he's back, the focus can be entirely on basketball. The Timberwolves are in a tough position right now. I mean, D'Angelo Russell is going to be out for the next month and a half with a knee injury. They still have some decent young players on that team, but right now they're in the bottom of the Western Conference standings. And even with Towns coming back, I'm not sure there's a way out for them. So, Towns is going to be a boost being back in the lineup, but this Minnesota team just doesn't have the talent without D'Angelo Russell to compete in what is top to bottom an extremely tough Western Conference.
Yeah, you look at Russell and Towns, I think have only played 5 games together so far, which certainly wasn't the vision going in. I'm curious what you think about Towns' future now, where he could ultimately end up. What does his future look like?
Well, Gerson Rojas, who is the new general manager in Minnesota, has developed a pretty strong relationship with Karl Towns. Ryan Saunders, the head coach, has been around for the entirety of KarlAnthony Towns' career. He has a strong relationship with Towns. Towns actually vouched for Saunders when he was, under consideration for the head coaching job a year ago. So I think they're at least on the same page with where this team is. And Towns is under contract through 2024. There have been inquiries about Towns from across the league. Teams are always trying to see if they can pry a player of that caliber loose. But as of right now, Towns isn't clamoring to get out of Minnesota, and the Timberwolves, because of that, have no reason to trade their franchise player. So it's a rebuilding year for Minnesota, no question, but they have D'Angelo Russell, and Russell and Karl Towns are, I don't want to call them best friends, but they're the closest of friends when it comes to players in the NBA. So that dynamic being in play, I think it bodes well, at least for the short term, with Karl Towns' future.
All right, Chris Mannix, senior writer at Sports Illustrated. Thanks for the latest on that.
You got it.